Colombia backs down on accepting deportees on military planes after Trump's tariff threats. Colombia has walked back from the brink of a damaging trade war with the United States, reaching an agreement on accepting deported migrants being returned on military planes after a flurry of threats from President Donald Trump that included steep tariffs. Colombia said Sunday evening it had agreed to all of President Trump's terms, including the unrestricted acceptance of immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally after 2 U.S. military planes carrying deportees were blocked from entering the country. We will continue to receive Colombians and Colombian women who return as deportees, guaranteeing them decent conditions as citizens subject to rights. Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo said in a televised statement. He added that U.S. deportation flights had resumed and the Colombian presidential plane was being prepared to assist in repatriating citizens. The idea that the Colombian president actually meant the problem is the digs that they are flying in is they're not good enough. I don't buy it for a second, but I do think that this speaks to how influential the United States is. People in the U.S. don't realize how much soft power the United States has. We don't have to threaten combat with everybody. Now, the leftists on X will go ahead and get it into a tizzy every time Donald Trump makes any kind of threat. But these threats are heated, and the other countries that are being threatened actually move because the United States is still the economic powerhouse. The United States still has the reserve currency of the world. So they have to move.
Well, Phil, it's carrots and sticks, and I feel like everyone's forgotten about that in the last 3 or 4 decades. We used to use carrots and sticks, and guess what? It's okay to use sticks sometimes, but I feel like the left, that woke virus, has ruined people's brains where they think they can't do anything that might offend somebody, so they're always too afraid to use a stick. And I think Trump is really showing, like you said, we are the greatest superpower on earth. It's okay for us to flex a little bit of muscle and use that stick from time to time, and this is the apotheosis of it, and it shows that it works and it's effective, and I hope he keeps doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that the United States shouldn't try to get better deals out of other countries because it might offend someone, I mean, that's so detrimental
That's
to
not
the
really
United
America first.
Yeah, never. It's not just not America first. It's America last, which is, that was a meme idea going around the internet, but that's really the way that the Democrats have behaved. It's as if the Democrats believe that we are wrong for being as powerful as we are. We are wrong for when we try to be a world leader. We are wrong whenever we do things that benefit the United States because we're so rich and so powerful. Everything to the left is some type of Marxist power dynamic. And because the United States is the dominant power in the world, anytime the U.S. uses that power, even soft power, again, now I'm not talking about getting into military conflicts, but when the United States uses the soft power, the United States is the bad guy for having the audacity to try to get deals that are beneficial to the United States. And now these, just taking back your I don't know if they're, well, I mean, I assume they're all criminals to some degree because that's the people that are getting sent back right away.
Yeah,
just taking back your criminals, that is not something that the United States is out of line for saying, hey, take back your criminals.
And I feel like the left always has paralysis by analysis. They're so busy thinking about how this thing might offend somebody and how this might percolate out and it might, disparately affect some marginalized group. We need to stop thinking like that. We have an objective. We need to achieve the objective. What's the most efficient way we can achieve that objective? And stop overanalyzing everything. But I feel like that's all the left does. And like you said, they seem to be hell-bent on putting us last. And I'm glad that we finally have a president that seems to show how easy it is to actually just put us first. It's not that hard.
You also said something about when the U.S. tries to use like soft measures to get changes. When we use soft measures, they call us Satan. So we whenever we try and do something like play little games and do things diplomatically, everyone hates us anyway.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like they'll call us the godless Satan of the United States because we like tried to do something diplomatic here in Lebanon, or we tried to do something sort of conciliatory over here in South America. And so if we're gonna just be evil Satan anyway, we may as well just go for it and like do everything the right way and just get it done as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I mean, considering the way
They hate us now.
Yeah.
They hate us anyway. Like, just do it.
Yeah, the successes that the Donald Trump administration has had in this past week have been remarkable. Like, he's really, really made some moves, and things have all turned out just the way that Donald Trump and, by extension, the American people want. And so I think that this is a ringing endorsement of the policies that he wants, and it hasn't even taken tariffs. All it's taken is negotiation. But the left and the Democrats don't even have the stomach for negotiation.
What's great, too, is Trump doesn't have to negotiate. He doesn't have to even take very much action at all.
Yep.
All he has to do is spout off. He doesn't even have to spout off on Twitter. He just has to spout off on Truth Social, right? And say stuff. Everyone goes crazy, and he gets his way without having to do anything.
Yeah.
He just has to say stuff. And
I do miss him on X, though.
Well, sure. I wish he'd come back to X, too. I mean, we have the new rapid response team now. They're back on X. That's going to be an interesting, that'll be interesting.
Speaking of X, I saw a great quote on there today. It was by someone named Antonin Scalia, but I thought he passed away. But it said, everyone's so afraid of offending their enemies.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you care if you offend your enemies? It said you should be doing what's going to garner you the respect of your peers and just do the right thing. Why are we so afraid of offending our enemies? I don't know, but the left seems obsessed with it.
Yeah, or like Steve Bannon says, pray for your enemies, you know? Yeah.
But don't try to get them to like
exactly.
you. Why are we always trying to get our enemies to like us? I just don't. It's such an odd thing.
The concern I have in that vein, I guess, is maybe I can see it from their perspective for a moment, is that if you make too many people hate you, the tide may shift and you may become very quickly no longer a superpower. Like if there were an invasion from the north and the south and the east and the west, nuclear.
No,
it would go nuclear. It would go. It would go nuclear.
But how would that happen?
Yeah, there is no like.
There was like Chinese attacks, missiles fired. Like if cities got hit all at once, like in a night. And we lost New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles.
Yeah, but all of those
Dallas.
places would get instantly nuked.
If we lost all those cities in a moment, like overnight,
Yeah, but
that would be...
all of our nuclear sites are elsewhere, though, are not even in there.
But we would still fight back. That's the thing, is the deterrence of force would probably make that not happen. But we would no longer be the superpower after that.
What is the positive result for any country that initiates a nuclear war with the United States in your mind?
False flag, like if you make it look like someone else did it, get the U.S. to strike back at the wrong person.
What I'm saying is, what would whatever country? So I don't know how you can't do a false flag with an all-out nuclear exchange, right? Like you can't, like China can't shoot all of its missiles and be like it was Russia, right? And either way, like that's just not possible. If the logistics of attacking the United States because of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, you can't be like, you can't do it under cover of darkness and hide it.
Well, they have nuclear submarines off the coast.
Nobody has enough nuclear submarines to take out the United States. And
it's not about, oh, sorry to interrupt, man.
Well, and nuclear like a lot of times nuclear submarines are shadowed by other nuclear submarines. So there are hunter-killer class submarines that that all their job is to do is follow behind the nuclear submarines of other countries.
Like, I don't think that it has happened by any means that too many people have been pissed off where they're like, all right, the liberal economic order is now done at 12:07 a.m. But because we're all still on really good trade relations with a lot of the world. But that would be the concern, is if we pissed off even our European allies, our South American allies. Obviously, Russia's ready to go for the throat. The Chinese would be happy to see the United States fall and trip over its own shoelaces.
Do you think that Russia is actually a threat, considering how much...
They're overextended.
How much damage they've taken just fighting the Ukraine? Do you think that they're actually...
I don't think they're a direct threat at all.
I don't think... The amount of money that we owe to China's not really... There's no incentive for China to actually...
Also, we're their biggest exporter.
Yeah, they like without the United States buying their the cheap
It's all
Chinese
the crap we buy.
Yeah, like without the U.S. buying them, they go into a recession and possibly a depression. And they've got 1.5 billion people in that country. So that, like, the Chinese Communist Party has to keep the population subdued to a certain degree. They don't have the military to actually suppress the population. They have to do it economically.
I feel like a lot of problems and even more problems result when you try to appease everybody. That's why we have a fentanyl crisis in this country. That's why we have over 11 million undocumented migrants in this country. That's why we have a border war going on almost. There's a lot of problems that result when you try to appease everyone. And I think Donald Trump's definitely taking the route of breaking away from what the Democrats have been doing for the last 4 years, and I think it's working.
The only reason I'm asking Ian this question is because I really do think that your concerns are not really something you have to worry a whole lot about. I'm trying to, like, allay your fears and stuff, because really the United States is like, there are no countries that have an incentive to actually get into a confrontation with the United States. Every country on earth will do whatever they can to avoid a confrontation with the U.S.
What I've been thinking is, like, if we went to blows with the cartels in Mexico and it turned into like an Afghanistan where we just invade and take it over because the government's incapable of doing anything for us, so we have to establish our own puppet government, that might piss off the rest of the world to the point where they're like, this country has overstepped.
I don't think anyone would care if we invaded Mexico. I honestly,
agree.
I don't think so. I think if we took over Canada,
That would probably be a little more
That's a British
I
kingdom.
think the UK would be mad if we took over Canada, and they might come at us with their little stabby knives or something, you know?
But hasn't Mexico invaded us effectively?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but I think also if we took over Mexico and we subdued those cartels, everyone would be like, oh, I guess America's getting a little testy.
I mean,
what's next?
I do kind of think you're
don't
right.
think
The rest of the world, at the very least,
I mean, what was the last time that Mexico was involved in something international? Wasn't that memo? Wasn't there like a
the last time they
forget the
almost
memo.
The last time they almost did was World War II.
Right, with that memo.
The Germans were
There was like a
talking
thing.
like, "Yo, we're gonna come over there."
and that was the last time.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Mexico doesn't have any type of military that could stand up to the United States. So the cartels
They can't even stand up to the cartels.
Exactly. And so I think that if the United States decided that they wanted to go into Mexico, get rid of the people in government because of corruption, and actually prop up a government and go after the cartels, I think that the argument that the United States government could make is at least as compelling as the argument, actually probably more compelling than the argument the government made when going into Iraq.
Just because of proximity. They're our southern neighbor. How much more important could it be? The primacy of that is evident. They're our southern neighbor.
They're attacking, they're continuously attacking our population. The government of Mexico does not stop people that are traveling through the country to invade the United States when it comes to immigration. Illegal immigrants. They've done nothing to stop it. They've helped. They have a government that is entirely corrupt. Like the cartels are in control. They kill journalists. They kill mayors. Not even just big people in the federal government, but like if the mayor of a town the cartel wants to control doesn't comply, they'll kill him. They're brutal, absolutely brutal, at least as brutal as the terrorists in ISIS or what have you. So the argument that not that I'm endorsing this, but if the United States decided they were going to, I think the United States could make a better argument for invading Mexico, ousting the government, saying they're not a real government, ousting that government than the argument made for going into Iraq.
Mexico they acknowledged that they got 4,000 deportees back during the first week. And they're concerned about it, but I don't think that there's anything that they can really do about it. And what's interesting too is I saw this journalist saying it's not fair to these other countries to just drop a whole bunch of people on them unexpected.
That's what's
And
happening
it's
to
like,
us.
oh, okay. Is that not fair?
Super
Is that
don't
not
care.
right? You don't.
Super don't care.
I really don't care, Margaret.
Yeah,
You know,
I really don't care, Margaret. That's
But it's
that's-
funny
we got
because
4,000 people. We get like quadruple that in an afternoon.
we 10 million in 4 years, at least 10 million, probably
Well,
15 million in 4 years.
It's over 2 million every year, and that's just the people who were accounted for. That's not the people who never came into contact with anybody or didn't surrender themselves or didn't apply for asylum or any of those other, the CBP One app or any of that stuff.
I feel like it's always rules for thee and not for me. Like they always
course.
want us to abide by these things. And the hypocrisy of it is, what do you mean we can't do that? They've been invading us for the last 4 years by the millions, and that's okay.
And all these nations don't care. Claudia Sheinbaum, president of Mexico, she said, what we ask for is respect for human rights. What have you been doing, girl?
They've been bringing fentanyl into our country. Where's the respect for our children's human rights? No one cares about our
Or
kids'
Americans'
human
human
rights
rights.
or anyone.
Like any of that.
Yeah, I think that the idea that any other country, particularly in South America and south of the U.S. border, I don't think that any of those countries are in any position to criticize the United States at all. Most of them have basket case governments, right? Most of them can barely handle their own population. They're very, very frequently some crazy form of socialism that just doesn't work. They rewrite their constitutions every decade or so because people are miserable. They have constitutions that are hundreds of pages long because they're just essentially they're saying that everybody has a right to everything, and they quickly realize that just putting a right on paper doesn't make it materialize in the world.
Wait, socialism hasn't worked a single time? That's weird. I thought it was the best thing ever.
I know this is a surprise to me too.
This speaks to an actual a real phenomenon, is that there is such a strong left leaning in most of the world. There are very, very few, if any, right wing governments. Right, like nowadays.
Germany might be looking at one of those soon.
It's possible that they might, but if you think about the past 20 years,
Would you call Islamic extremists right wing?
maybe
which case Syria, Afghanistan.
Saudi Arabia might be
Right.
right wing because it's a monarchy.
Monarchy, right.
There are there are a handful of legitimate monarchies in the world still, and I think that those probably would be the clear right-wing governments, but the ones that make all the noise complaining about the United States, they're all leftists. They're all, and the arguments they make are always leftist arguments. Oh, you're oppressing us, you're so powerful and we're so weak, and it's always a Marxist power dynamic. And the United States needs to just ignore that stuff and behave as the superpower that it is, because the U.S. does have the ability to influence other countries just with soft power. We don't need to get into conflicts with other countries. Most of the time, the U.S. has plenty of power to influence just with essentially with carrots. Hey, look, we won't do this. And maybe it is a little of the stick, but it's not like, not combat. So,
well, and I think it's interesting too that, leftist ideology in theory sounds appealing.
Yes.
But, a few centuries ago, with Adam Smith writing Wealth of the Nations and then later Ayn Rand, we understood that capitalism was the way reality needs to work because all the incentives run in the right direction. So it's interesting that leftist ideology still has such a hold on people's minds, even here in America, in 2024, when we've seen throughout history that it just doesn't work. It's good in theory, but in reality, we know what really works and we keep rejecting it. And I think Donald Trump is going back to what really works. And I think it's time we ditch the kind of leftist head in the clouds thinking.
It seems like capitalism is pretty awesome. Least worst system ever been tried by humanity that I can tell economically, except, and it's not perfect. I'm not saying just get rid of it, but like generational wealth things. So
unfettered capitalism can be pernicious and is not good either. That can lead to a lot of corruption.
Yeah, so you tax the wealthy families more, but okay, wealthy family has a kid, they give their kid all their wealth. It makes sense. You want to give your kid your money. Poor family has a kid, the kid's eating dirt, picking through feces for seeds so he doesn't starve to death. Wealthy family has a kid, gives him the best education, the best food, he has the greatest IQ because he's healthy. And then that all of a sudden creates this this disparity between humans, and you're like, how come that guy over there is 9 and he gets a bicycle and I don't? And so that's, I think, where this leftism
Adam
comes
Smith noted that in Wealth of the Nations, and noted that unfettered capitalism could lead to some really bad things. And so that was laid out there. And so, no, I don't think anyone's advocating, even Milton Friedman or Thomas Sowell or anyone would advocate for completely laissez-faire, unfettered capitalism. But at its base, it works a lot better than these leftists.
We also have, in America, we have pretty much I would say the only country in the world where you can start out eating dirt, envying your friend's bike, and rise to be a rich man, right? Rise to be president, rise to be captain of industry. So even with generational wealth, if you look at the way that wealth works, it usually only lasts like 3 generations. That's why in the UK, you have all of these aristocrats who are broke, right? That's like a thing. That's like a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke in the UK because that happens. But here in the US, you can be poor. You can grow up poor and you can rise to the top. And I think that's something that we don't see anywhere else. It's something that we see with the benefit of the social contract. We see that with the benefit of capitalism and with a lot of the social programs that we do have in this country, like for a long time, before it got totally infiltrated, a really good public education system. You know, I think about my grandparents who were the children of immigrants. My grandmother went to public school in Brooklyn, New York. And in public school, she learned opera. She learned Italian. She learned French. She learned all of these things. She graduated early and ended up going to Hunter College, another public school. And she graduated that to become a teacher in Brownsville, Brooklyn. She grew, her parents they owned a grocery shop. They had immigrated. They got here with nothing, and they managed to end up owning a grocery shop. One thing that happened was my great-grandfather opened his grocery shop on 34th Street, in Manhattan. And when Macy's came in, Macy's wanted to buy out the whole block. So they bought his grocery shop. He got money from that because he had something he could sell. He moved to Brooklyn, opened a new shop. And then, the next thing, his granddaughter is an attorney, working for the SEC. You can work your way up in this country like nowhere else on earth. And so I think that while what you're saying is true about, poverty and all of that stuff, and that being a problem with capitalism, I think that's true. But I also think that we do have a fix for that here that we haven't seen anywhere else. We can probably keep making it better, but I don't think that we can make it better by pushing equity so that just every kid gets a bike. Because that kid eating dirt who wants the bike, maybe he's going to get a summer job. Maybe he's going to get a summer job working at 7-Eleven, save up for that bike. He's going to like getting paid every other week, and he's going to work hard his whole life. And so that's something, too, that we're seeing. If we, there's a lot of hardworking illegal immigrants in this country. Should they all be getting the jobs instead of that poor kid eating dirt, who was like born in Detroit, raised there?
And there's also something.
This is a question too. Like, can we do better for our citizens?
Yeah.
By prioritizing them.
And we are the culmination of our experiences too. So the idea of kids have to learn to go to work and learn to save and learn to do things. If you just give them stuff. And we see this happen a lot with people that win the lottery and stuff. They don't look at if they're
MC Hammer.
If you're bad with money, if you don't learn how to manage your money, and you're just handed a boatload of money, you'll squander it and stuff. And kids that are just handed things, they don't see the same value as when they have to work for it. So I do think that you've got a lot of there's substance to your point, but I think that, like you said, it's the least bad system that's ever been tried, and I think that it's the only system that really does allow upward mobility.
There's the public education system. It has evolved now, I think, to the internet. Like it used to be, you kind of feel like the education was given to you. You're sent to a spot, and then it's given to you by the teacher. Now you have to go get it. You have to seek it out, and it's there. All the data, it's available to learn for kids, and you don't have to wait for everyone else in your class to figure it out because you can do it as fast as you want now. But you have to go get it. You can't wait for it to be given to you.
I mean, I don't
I
know.
think that's true.
You don't think that? In public school doesn't. The public school still has lesson programs, and if you go to school, no, they don't.
No, I mean, not really. One thing that public schools have are Chromebooks, just like Ford infiltrated LA to make sure that they never had a decent public transit system. You have had Google Chrome books infiltrating public schools so that every kid comes home with a Chromebook and their homework is IXL or any of these programs where you have the computer teach you. One thing that I think is really missing, and I was talking to my son about this the other day, is I had teachers, right? Like I remember my teachers and what they taught me. I remember my 4th grade teacher and the way she taught me multiplication tables, Mrs. Fife. It was very difficult. But I remember these teachers that I had who were passionate about teaching and passionate about the information they had and the knowledge that they had and, the books that they loved. I had a teacher in high school, Peter Rinka, and he gave us this list of books that were like, you need to read all these books in your life. It wasn't just do this for my class, pass the test. It was these books. And I'll never forget what he told us. He was in World War II. He was a soldier in World War II, and he loved paperback books. He always had a paperback in his back pocket, and he said they fit perfectly, and he was never without a paperback book. This is like this kind of teacher who is just passionate. They are, I'm sure, out there, but in a lot of ways, they're stifled by this Common Core computer-generated educational programming that it's hard to break out of. And it's hard for kids to find their passion when they're being taught by AI programming.
Well, and they're also being taught like propaganda. Me and my brothers were homeschooled our whole lives. So my brothers were yanked out of elementary school. I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I was homeschooled my whole life along with my brothers. And that's because in the late 80s and early 90s, I was born in 87, my brothers were already being sent home with propaganda books. And my parents saw the writing on the wall, and they knew what was happening, and they were having disputes with the elementary schools called Thomas Paine in Urbana, Illinois. And they said, nope, we're teaching you at home. We've had enough of this. So we were homeschooled our whole life until college. I went to high school for 1 year, my sophomore year, because I begged my parents to let me go. And think about it. That was 20 years ago. And think how far the public education system has fallen since even then. And this all started in the late 80s and early 90s, and it's just going to keep getting worse.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.